yesterday you mentioned the intellect relates to the salvific path and the path of sanctification. And you said that the path of sanctification is an arduous path. So I was wondering if there's a connection between taking on that path and, sort of in the traditional world, people went through these rites of passages and they had like initiatic moments. So maybe there was a connection between the two.
I mean, traditionally, the people would find a teacher who was somebody who had done that journey and was in a position to help that person on their path. And those traditionally they were the scholars who acted according to their knowledge. They had tahqiq, the muhaqqiqun. So in these latter days that we're in, I mean, by the 9th century already, scholars were bemoaning the fact that these people didn't really exist anymore. Ahmed Zarruq called it al-kibrit al-ahmar, is sometimes what is called the red sulfur, which was the alchemist's material that transmutes lead into gold. In other words, your toxic soul, that person would help you. They were a spiritual alchemist who would help you transmute your soul from a toxic state to a purified state. Ahmed Zarruq says, وَهُوَ مَعْدُوم. These people. So the best thing is just to find good teachers that are humble and have learned, hopefully in chains as well. It's not an absolute requisite. Imam Suyuti mentions that. As long as they're qualified to be teaching, and then the signs are pretty clear. They should follow one of the rightly guided schools, and then not have any bid'ah. Now, who determines what that is? Well, hopefully it's the schools that do that. So part of the problem now is that we have, there's been a breakdown of all these things. So we're in a time of what they call anomie in sociology. And it's just a time where things have broken down. And so it's very difficult for people. And a lot of people are grappling. But in these latter days, the Prophet ﷺ said that there would be a lot of leniency. If you adhere to 1/10 of what the Prophet brought, then you'll be saved. Whereas the Sahaba had to follow all of it. And that's not to say, any compromise on the foundational things like the 5 pillars. That's not in any way. But in other words, these are difficult times. And the Prophet ﷺ said about his ikhwan, he said, ikhwani, he was like yearning for his brothers and sisters. I mean, it's understood in the language of the Arabs. And they asked him who they were. And he said, there will be people that come towards the latter days. He said they would do anything if they could see me. And then he said they will have the reward of 50 people. And they said, 50 to us? And he said, yes. And he said, how is, they couldn't understand. They said, how is that? And he said, لَكُمْ أَعْوَانٌ عَلَى الْخَيْرِ وَلَيْسَ لَهُمْ أَعْوَانٌ. You have lots of helpers. In other words, the whole society is facilitating. Like when I lived in West Africa, everybody prayed tahajjud. It was just normal. Like the whole village, you heard people reciting Quran at 3, 4 in the morning, every morning. So to grow up in a society like that, it's facilitating for you. But if you're living in a society where everything is distracting you from God, and yet you're doing your best to remain present with God, your reward is going to be, inshallah, it'll be immense. So I mean, I've told this story before, but it was a very profound, for me, it really had an impact on me where with this stewardess, I was with Muhammad al-Awadi, the Kuwaiti intellectual. He's a brilliant Kuwaiti man. And we were flying together, and there was a stewardess, and I can't remember how it came up, but he asked her about how she felt about having to serve wine. And she said, I always serve it with my left hand. You know, I mean, I don't know. Allah's Arhamar Rahimin. She's doing something to recognize this is najasa. You know, and that really had an impact on me. It's just a hard time for people. You know, and a lot of these people come from places where there's not a lot of, I mean, you guys are so privileged, like the privilege that we have in this country. And I'm talking about all the way down, because poor people in this country are like rich people in places I've lived at. You know, but we're a very spoiled people. Because people, I mean, there's so many people that their lives are dictated by circumstances that are so beyond the pale of what we could imagine in terms of hardship. Because we haven't experienced those things. At least most of us. I mean, Freydun has. Freydun, you know, I mean, he was a refugee of a war. They crossed the border fleeing Afghanistan into Persia. He had to, you know, and he comes from the Mujaddidi family. These were the notables of Afghanistan. They're one of the aristocratic families of Afghanistan, descendants of Ahmed Sirhindi, descendants of Umar Farooq, you know. But they lost everything and had to come, and then they come to America. You know, so there's a lot of people like that in this country that are immigrants, but people that grew up here, they don't know what that's like. You know, you see people, you don't know what they've been through.